And welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. So I'm really excited about today's guest, which is Dorie Clark, because her and I can talk for hours on thought leadership. So I'll give you just I was reading Dorie's bio earlier today, and I'm totally depressed and feel like an underachiever. So I would like all of you to feel the same. So I'll share it with you. So Dorie's been named one of the top 50 business thinkers in the world by Thinkers 50. Recognized as the #1 communication coach in the world by Marshall Goldsmith Leading Global Coaches Award. She's a keynote speaker. She teaches at Duke, at the Fuqua School of Business, and at Columbia Business School. She's been recognized as a branding expert. I want to fast forward to like the cool stuff that people probably don't know. Harvard Business Review, written a bunch of bestsellers. But at age 14, you went to the college program for exceptionally gifted kids. And at 18, you graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Smith College. Right. So 18, I was trying to figure out how to open a beer with my teeth. So there's a bit of a difference between us. And then, of course, a couple years later, you got a master's in theological studies from Harvard Divinity School. So without further ado, let's just sort of dive in. So I've just confirmed my theory that there is no linear path to thought leadership. So how did you get here? How did this happen?
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter. Well, the very short version is that my original hypothesis was that I wanted to be actually a literature professor. And after I got my master's degree in theological studies, I got turned down by all the doctoral programs I applied to in literature.
Okay.
So I said, all right, well, what's the next best alternative? And so I became a journalist. But unfortunately, that was basically right when the industry started to collapse. So I was a journalist for a year, got laid off, could not get another job as a journalist, worked in politics for a number of years, always on losing campaigns. So I was not having a good run in my early 20s, but I did learn a lot. But eventually I began running a nonprofit. And It was through running this nonprofit that I realized, oh, wow, wait a minute. Actually, this had never occurred to me. I'm like, actually, what I'm doing is running a business. And then I said, well, geez, maybe I could run my own business. And so I became an entrepreneur in 2006 and have been consulting and coaching and doing the entrepreneurial sort of thought leadership business since then.
Fantastic. So on the thought leadership side, so I think there's two things that I always think about. Number one, there isn't a typical linear path, right? People come from all different places. I've heard everything from, well, I was a homeless juggler to stories like yours to was a CEO of a Fortune 500. So I think that it still very much holds true that there is no one best way or whatever. What I find equally interesting is the creative ways that folks are dabbling with business models. And obviously in the sort of I was hoping to say post-COVID world, but whatever world this is that we're living in, certain business models have gotten blown up. And, a la speaking, right? Because it's hard to get 300 people to come to your house and pay you. So people are doing all sorts of interesting and creative things. So break down for us sort of what you see as sort of traditional opportunities that are still working well for thought leaders and maybe some new and creative and innovative ways thought leaders, because there's still messages to get out. There's still people that love to hear your stuff. This intermediary phase of getting in front of people on a stage in Vegas, that's temporarily sort of on hold. So what are you seeing? What are you doing that's different?
Yeah, certainly I've been thinking about this a lot. So I'm glad you asked. This was actually the topic of my most recent book, which was called Entrepreneurial You. And it's basically a book about how to create multiple income streams in your business. So I've been pretty attuned to this for a while. So certainly you're right. A lot of people in the thought leadership space, including myself, made a significant chunk of money from keynote speeches, which has been hit the hardest. But sure. There's a lot of other areas that I have been trying to build over time and encouraging other people to as well. I would say that probably the most notable standout has been online courses, which have performed like a champion during COVID. So for me personally, I started experimenting with it in 2014, and I did a course first for Creative Live. Then I did a course for a company called Learningly, which was partnered with The Economist. Then in 2016, I started working with LinkedIn Learning and also began launching my own courses independently. And so have been doing a lot with that. And that has really there was a dramatic uptick in terms of what has been possible with COVID for my flagship course, which is called Recognized Expert, I would typically get about 50 people per time to register for it. And, it's a $2,000 course. So it was, a decent moneymaker. But I decided I wasn't sure if it would be a great success or a terrible failure shortly after COVID. I'm like, I really don't know what the pulse is here.
Sure.
But I did a launch in May, and 125 people signed up for it. I mean, it was just by far more interest than I had experienced. So I think that there's a real hunger for that. So I think that that's definitely a key thing. I've also shifted the masterminds that I run to online as well. So
I want to unpack the courses though. So I've seen many of your courses and they're really well done. And what I mean by that are people that are speakers, consultants, used to delivering value to their clients in a face-to-face environment or consulting environment or as a professor or whatever. They hear, oh, well, everybody's doing an online course, so I'll just take my iPhone and hit record and blabber, right? And because that sort of works for me when I'm in the room. And I think people, I don't think they do it intentionally, but I don't think they have a level of awareness or respect for instructional design and what it really takes to produce a quality course. It's not just about the video and the slick graphics and the handouts and all that stuff, but it's really being able to chunk something down into sort of it's almost the elements and say, okay, the curse of the expert is I just know, right? So if someone was to ask you a question, you just sort of know right off the top of your head because you've seen it before. But if you have to decompose that so that it's teachable, that's not an easy thing to do. So did you get help from a learning efficacy instructional design standpoint in terms of breaking your thing? Like how did you conquer that? Because you've done a great job at it.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I did not. I did not hire an instructional designer. I was, partly because I was too cheap to do it because I just didn't know if it would work. I didn't know if anyone would be interested.
Sure.
So I certainly wasn't going to shell out a ton of money for something that nobody cares. So I was really committed to all right, what is our minimum viable product? Like, how do we test this sucker? So I think one of the things that was extremely valuable for me in April of 2016, I launched a pilot for the Recognized Expert course. So I decided that I would test it with a small group of people. I capped it at 40 people, and I did it at a steep discount. I offered it for $500, and I let people know, hey, we're testing this out. Who wants to basically be the guinea pig? And so for $500, people were willing to take a chance. And so it was great in terms of validation for the premise, because in 45 minutes, it sold out. I sent the message and less than an hour later, we filled it. But I created the course in real time with those participants. So I, as kind of part of the bargain, I surveyed them relentlessly. And so before, it was like a 6-week program. And before every week, I would say, okay, the topic this week is finding your breakthrough idea. What are your questions? What problems have you had? What have you tried before that didn't work, et cetera, et cetera? And I'd ask them all these questions, and I would create the material based on their feedback and what they wanted to know. And then at the end of every week, I would say, what did you think of this session? What did you like? What did you not like? What was confusing?
So what I love about that is I have found in my work with clients that there's a continuum. There's people that are, it takes them 11 years to write a book because they, polish. And, ultimately it's a fear of ship it. It's a fear of failure. It's a fear of, I just got to tweak that one more thing. And then there's the other folks that throw it out the door, right? And it sounds like you're closer to that, but in a more deliberate and thoughtful way, right? Meaning you are transparent with this population that said, listen, I've got more than a hypothesis here. It's not going to be perfect. And the bargain is you'll get a financial discount, but I need the data. So how different was what was delivered the second time based on the result of working with a bunch of human lab rats? Like what was the 2 or 3 major breakthroughs that you're like, geez, I never would have thought of that?
Yeah. So format-wise, it was pretty different. For the original pilot cohort, I was delivering everything live via Zoom, actually. So, I mean, it was able to be the world's cheapest course because it was basically just the Zoom subscription.
Click the button.
Yeah, exactly. So I would create these kind of super like ransom note looking PowerPoint slides and just walk people through it on Zoom. And then we'd have tons of time for Q&A. And again, through the Q&A, I viewed that in many ways as an exploratory type thing because I'm like, they're asking questions about things that are probably important to them or things that I left out. So we did all of that on Zoom. They really enjoyed the experience because it was a lot of, sort of personal contact with me, and I was building it based on their needs. So I think it was satisfying for them in that way, even though it was not fancy or flashy. But by the time I did the second iteration, the non-pilot iteration, I had turned it into video modules. So based on all of the feedback and what I had created and the questions, I came up with a list. Okay, so when it comes to finding your breakthrough idea, which is one of the sections,
top 10 things they'll probably ask or something.
Yeah, social media, whatever. I'm like, okay, here's the top 10. And so I made, say, 3 to 5 minute videos for each of those things. And I filmed, and I did actually film them all on an iPhone. The iPhone has, it's actually amazing picture quality. I think sometimes people get obsessed with the techniques and the technology. I mean, I actually, one thing which is a good reality check, in 2007, I actually directed a documentary film. And in 2007, that was the year actually that the iPhone was introduced. But, we were using a camera crew and things like that. But the film that we used, what we created for a lot of money in 2007 is actually less good than what an iPhone is. So I feel perfectly fine about that. I think the key is
but it's more about the thoughtfulness. So when I'm buying your course, I'm not grading you against Star Wars. I don't expect special effects and you to blow up things. It's really about the efficacy of the learning and the thinking. Maybe we should add like blowing things up to courses. I don't know. That's kind of fun.
New revenue stream.
New revenue, right? It's extra if you want the
it's the
car chase, the car chase going to the speech or something.
Yeah.
So that's very cool. If you're enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about our podcast, please leave us a review and share it with your friends. We're available on Apple Podcast and on all major listening apps, as well as at thoughtleadershipleverage.com/podcasts. I think one of the things I take away from what you've said is the benefit the second time to you now that it's recorded is it's now asynchronous, right? So even though the Zoom one you have to do when it's profitable and whatever, now it's like click go and you've got an asset that could click out some dividends for you. And this concept of minimum viable product, co-creation, et cetera, the market will tell you what they want. And I think one of the most amazing things that's underutilized for thought leaders is actually having the courage to go out there and find the market and talk to them and say, hey, I have a hypothesis about how you might enjoy my content in this format, in this modality, and sort of pencil drawings, right? And why don't you tell me what you'd like? If this was a house, maybe I want the kitchen facing that way. And they will tell you. And they will tell you loudly and feel like, they're part of the process. No one's ever hung someone else's kid's art on the refrigerator, right? So it's getting that ownership piece. What are the other opportunities that you're seeing in terms of creative ways the thought leaders could connect? Because let me throw this out at you and see how you respond. So Mastermind touches this, but one of the things that I've come to realize over the last couple months is I was asking, well, why was everybody going to all these events, right? It seemed like, either one group of people that I know were speaking at the events, another group of people I know that are going to events, but everybody was so event-centric. And what I realized is there's content is one piece. It's convenient to go to Orlando for 3 days if you're in the industry and hear everything there is. But the other is this community. So if you and I lived in different cities and we're in the same industry, it's the one time a year we can grab dinner. It's insurance for my career. It's all those other things. So what I'm seeing now is great thought leaders taking their awesome content and wrapping a little bit of community around it are the ones that are winning. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think community is really key. And in fact, to your point about the fact that with the second iteration of the Recognized Expert course, it could become asynchronous, that is true. And one of the ways that I've tried to make it a worthwhile experience for people is that they're not just paying $2,000 for, here's, tons of hours of video. What we actually have done, which I think really enables it to be a sticky experience and a meaningful experience, is that we have a super robust Facebook community that people are very into. And we also do monthly live webinars. And I give people like a lifetime membership in that so that they are just part of it, part of the community.
So on the Facebook community side, you create value by just putting a bunch of people in a room that have a common desire whether to learn what you're teaching, and they have a place to do that amongst each other. And it's the whole peer-to-peer learning, right? Like, yeah, you're the expert, you know more than most, but they can teach each other. And then you integrate a little bit of live piece to sort of keep that community 3D, if you will.
Yes, that's exactly right. Because yeah, for a lot of these folks, I mean, they don't have a good place necessarily where, oh, they're looking for a new logo for their business. Well, which one is good? How do you tell? Well, if you put up the 6 versions and you have 50 people who are commenting and voting and say, oh my God, definitely number 2. It makes it a lot easier, to get recommendations for a videographer or, a client wants me to do this. How do you think I should think about pricing? The community aspect does make it very sticky and very valuable.
Well, and there's, and I experience this in my work with clients. I'm curious your take. There's a loneliness to thought leaders. And I don't mean like boohoo, they're crying in the corner, but accountants know other accountants, lawyers know other lawyers, like thought leaders. Now, there are communities of thought leaders out there, but by and large, you're the only one in your physical proximity. It's not like you go stand on the side of your kid's soccer game and there's 3 other accountants there, or 3 other keynoters there. You're usually the only one in sort of your physical proximity that does what you do. So I've always found a hunger of thought leaders to connect. I always find it's magical, anything, whether it's a dinner or cocktail or whatever. Anytime you get a bunch of them in the room, assuming there's ego management, cool things happen.
Yeah, it's so true. I think you're right on with that, Peter. Because yeah, if you were part of a profession that has a particular training path, oh, you are a doctor, so you go to medical school with hundreds of other doctors. Well, obviously you're going to be chock full of contacts in your field. But because as you were saying at the outset, there are so many heterogeneous paths to thought leadership. There's not necessarily a way for people, at least in the early phases of what they're doing, to break in.
And what I've also found, the other side of that is people that are earlier on in the career. I always encourage them to reach out to the folks they love, reach out to the folks they work. You'd be surprised how generous thought leader. People think, oh, they published a book, they must, sit around all day smoking a pipe in a tweed jacket or something exotic or whatever. But I think you'd be surprised when you reach out to thought leaders with a point of view and a point, not just, sort of enamored, how generous most are.
Yeah, I think that's right on. And it's interesting how far that can go. I think sometimes people do it a little bit askance, like, when you said like a point of view, I've seen some people, every once in a while someone will do this with me, but I've heard colleagues talk about it where it's like someone will reach out to them and it's sort of a fan letter, but it's also them sort of like negging you. Like, I saw like a flaw in your analysis. And it's like, motherfucker, I don't really want to hear this. Like, okay. It's like not the way to become best friends. Is like, actually, you're wrong.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no. That, I mean, that's just lack of tact, right? So there's lots of ways to start a relationship. One is, you have big ears and you're funny looking, probably doesn't get you a second date, right? So unless you have enough, now you can disagree with someone with respect and say, listen, I've studied your model and it's really cool, but there's another one that I've developed and we overlap here and we have some differences. It might be interesting to have a conversation, but more of a kind of a quaint, actually a respectful disagreement and dialogue. Remember those days that were so quaint? You could actually have a respectful disagreement with folks. Anyway, I think there's a bit of that, but I also, when you unleash the power of lots of thought leaders in a safe space, the collaboration and the cool stuff that happens is just awesome. I just love being being part of that process of connecting folks from different fields and different connections and all that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's fantastic.
So what's next? Other than obviously there'll be a new book and all that, but what do you see coming around the bend? Let me sort of preface it saying, I don't think that as a result of COVID, we're in a resume world where, oh, good, that was just like a really long snow day and we go back to exactly where we were. I think a lot of it is about reinvent. And I think so many things were taken off of our proverbial plates. We're going to be really mindful when we put anything back, a la a commute, a la going to an office, a la jumping on an airplane 5 times a week. What are your thoughts on that?
I've actually been I've been doing detailed scenario planning analyses. Like I've actually been, I think lots of people talk about scenario planning. Oh yeah, it's a good thing to do. But I actually have been doing it and literally writing it down and trying to take action steps as a result of it, because I recognize that there's a lot of ways that things could break, and I
Sure.
just don't know. So I think that one possibility is that we are, we are very skeptical, and there's like a high bar for a
Right.
long time about
Yep.
what would warrant travel. And so we're going to be virtual for a long time, if not ever. And that's going to be the default moving forward. I think another possibility, I mean, this is sort of more how things happened after the 1918 flu pandemic, albeit there was not an internet then, was that people had just been cooped up for too long, and the Roaring Twenties started.
Yeah,
And people
exactly.
are like, "Oh my God, fantastic! We
Yeah.
can see other people. We can go
Crowds, yay!
we can go dancing. Yeah, we can go to the movies. Okay." And so
Right.
it's possible that another scenario is that everybody wants to have a conference, is that, the speaking business booms because people are so desperate to actually, yes, I want to go to that conference. Yes, I want to get away from my family. Yes,
Yeah.
I want to connect.
Yeah, but it's a big unknown, right? So I mean, I also think that people will evaluate and say, hey, if I was going to 8 or 10 conferences a year, maybe 3 or 4, because everyone now, there's the cost of travel, and you're more aware of, when everyone was doing it one way, there was this herd mentality. And now it's like, I think we've all realized, because of where imagine if the technology was only 5 years before where it was today, and we were struggling with like a GoTo meeting or something like versus Zoom, how worse this would be.
Oh,
And I think
man.
people are realizing there is so much more, and a lot of people it was forced on, that you can do in a digital way.
Yeah.
And again, nothing replaces human contact, but is it absolutely necessary for everything when you do a full cost load it? So
Yeah.
it'd be
Yeah,
interesting to see.
that's exactly right. So yeah, I think there is a world where very high priced premium experiences
Yes.
could become quite popular, because it just becomes that much more valuable. I mean, I think about it as like, a lot of people thought that putting TED Talks online would demonetize TED, and
Right.
instead it made
Absolutely
TED
not.
a household name that everybody wants to go to.
And
So
actually, the price of TED as an event has probably 3x'd since the sort of democratization of TED
yeah,
in terms of the actual
absolutely.
tickets sold. I mean, now I think it's 12, 15,000 for Big TED.
It's 10 currently, but
Okay.
for the big one, although they're charging, I think it's 12 now for a smaller one for next year. I'm aware of this because I was supposed to go in April, and of course it was
Yeah.
canceled for the pandemic. They attempted to reschedule it for July,
Yeah. Good
realized
luck.
that was over optimistic, and now they're under optimistic, and they've canceled it for 2021. And they're doing some other alternate thing.
Yeah.
And so now theoretically I'm going sometime in April 2022. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, that's pencil. Everything. I think life is in pencil now. Anyway, this has been fantastic, Dorie. I appreciate your time. I have been an admirer of your huge body of work for such a long time, and thank you for spending time with us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Peter. What a great opportunity to talk with you. Thank you so much.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.